Jay Ferruggia. What's up, dude?
What is up, my brother? Glad to be here. Thank you.
I pronounced your last name correctly there, didn't I?
You did, yeah. It's a rarity.
Like most people screw that up. What are some of the variations you've heard on it?
Ferruggia, like some things don't even make sense, like Ferragamo. And I'm like, dude, what? Like, did you even graduate?
The Italian designer.
Yeah.
You got any sweaters?
It was always super helpful for, people trying to call and sell you something, like telemarketers, because they were, hello, Mr. Ferrer, and I would just hit click.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't know me, so don't even call back. Hey, so let me, you're going to do your own little intro, because a lot of people who listen to me probably don't listen to you.
Sure.
Other than if they heard about when I reshared when you had me on your show on Renegade Radio. But Jay came on my radar. We have some mutual friends, and I started listening to a couple of shows, and he just I'm like, how does this guy know everybody in the world? But also a very eclectic group, not just fitness and nutrition stuff, but like music, movie, actor, business. So what I want to get into, and the reason I actually like for all my listeners, is I went up and Jay interviewed me, and I was like, this guy's like really down to earth and really cool, but he's always on the other side of the mic. And I said, and this is weird for me because I'm used to being interviewed all the time. So I started the podcast, and I was like, this is fucking weird. Like, I don't know how to listen. I don't know how to ask questions. It was so bizarre, and it still is. But I remember, like, I'm watching you pumping out shit, and I'm going, like, and I know you've been interviewed, of course, but you're mostly the guy who sets up the interviews and extracts cool details from your cool guests. And I said, I'm going to fucking interview Jay, and I'm going to ask him questions no one's ever asked him. Put him on the spot. And so, but for people who don't know who you are, tell us who you are. And of course your background you got some like some really interesting stories from back on the East Coast that led you out to Cali.
Sure. So I started in fitness in 1994. I grew up just kind of a skinny, weak, insecure kid. And, I watched Schwarzenegger and Stallone on the big screen and Hulk Hogan and The Ultimate Warrior every Saturday morning on wrestling. And I was just, this little skinny fat dude. And I was like, man, I want to be one of those.
Hold on a second. You were a skinny fat dude.
Well, so first I was a chubby kid, and then I got taller, and then I was still just chubby but skinny.
Right. Got it.
Yeah.
Disgusting. Go on.
Yeah, disgusting. So I would, as a kid, I would get beat up and whatnot, and I was like, man, I want to be one of those larger-than-life superheroes. So I got into training, and in 1987, my cousin Christine was dating a pro wrestler, and I was obsessed with pro wrestling. So I was like, this is amazing. And here's one of these real-life heroes that I get to know. And so he started writing me training programs, and then it became an obsession of mine. And I was going to school. I got tuberculosis in I was like 19, and which I didn't even know people still got.
Right.
So I had to come home and be on bed rest for 3 months. And so during that time, back then there's no internet. I just in the back of Iron Man magazine, you could order like books and VHS videos and everything. So I started studying all that kind of stuff, and got my first personal trainer certification. Later that summer, I started training people. And by the end of the summer, I was on pace to make $100,000, which was nuts. I was 19. And I really didn't know anything about business or anything. It was just growing rapidly. So I transferred back home, and was basically for the next 12 years, I was in the gym 12 hours a day. And I didn't have any athletes at the time, but that was my goal, was to train athletes. So we worked up maybe a couple years into it. I got my first athlete, and then that.
Now, when you say explain what you mean by athlete to listeners, because they would probably assume that all your clients are athletes, but you're talking about like amateur and professional athletes.
So I was just training normal people at the beginning, and then because I'm only 19, I'm new to it. And then about 3 years in, I got referred my first high school athlete, who actually ended up staying with me. No, I'm sorry. He was in middle school all through 7th, 8th grade, high school, college, and then even when he went to try out to play pro ball. So he was with me forever. And to this day, I'm still really good friends with him. I was at his wedding. But he referred me a few other high school athletes at the time, and they all wanted to train together. So nowadays, everybody does group training, CrossFit's group training. Nobody had done that back in those days. You go to Gold's, do a one-on-one personal training. So I basically came up with the idea to start, like, I give myself credit for starting group training back in 96.
Right. Well, I invented the internet and you invented group training. We should actually start a business, but go on. So this started to catch on like wildfire.
Like wildfire, where we would have 50 plus high school athletes coming in after school. Then they would go on to college. So I had college athletes. They would refer me guys in the off season. Those guys went on to become pro athletes. They would refer teammates back to me. And it was just crazy. It was like that for the next 12 years or so. And
this was out where? Jersey?
In Jersey, yeah.
Yep. And you also were friends with some people that are still in the business and pretty high profile. A couple of guys out there. Who are some of those? Can you name drop a little?
Yeah. So Joe DeFranco. So I met Joe DeFranco, Alan Cosgrove, Martin Rooney in '96 at a training workshop, and we've all remained friends to this day, which is crazy. And Joe and I had my gym about 2 or 3 years before Joe had his. He was still working at the facility, but we were known for being some of the originators of the kind of underground warehouse garage style gyms that you see so much today.
Very cool.
Back in those days, you could really only go to a public gym and do what they had there. And we had ropes, chains, bands, sleds, sledgehammers, tires, kegs,
all the stuff that's cool now.
Yeah.
Right. That's pretty fascinating. I was listening to one of your shows, and one of your guests mentioned an article you had written in I think it was Men's Fitness. But did you have columns? Or you just submitted articles for some time?
No, it was 2001. I just started writing stuff. We didn't have the word blog back then. It was just like a crappy website. I started writing, and then my stuff started to grow on the internet as well. And then I got on bigger and bigger websites. Then I just started submitting stuff to magazines, and eventually I got my own column, probably for 5 years in Men's Fitness. Then they made me the training advisor of the whole magazine. I was the chief training advisor for Men's Fitness and an advisor to Muscle and Fitness. And then when Arnold got back into fitness, I can't remember how many years back, I was one of the first 5 people he called to be an advisor on his site.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Dude, this is exciting stuff. Now, just to piggyback on you're referencing athletes. Last time I saw you up in LA, and I'm not going to mention stuff because I don't know what your confidentialities are with certain groups and elements, but are there, you're working with some pro teams when I was up there, I believe. Can you talk about that, or is that non-disclosure?
Well, there's some stuff I can and can't talk about, but I could talk about, like, for example, what I was doing with the Dodgers when you were here.
Right.
And that was actually, so it's been an evolution through, I basically did nothing but fitness from 19 to 39. And then I just went through this growth period. It was more, personal development, self-help kind of stuff. And because I realized so much of what was missing in my own life. And, I had gone from 145 pounds when I graduated high school to 225. And, wow. But I was still just like a bigger version of that insecure, socially awkward kid, So I had to fix some stuff on my end. And in doing that, attending workshops and seeking out the right people and reading the books and whatnot, people started gravitating towards that info that I was putting out too, almost more so than they did towards my fitness stuff. So the Dodgers reached out and said, "Hey man, we love your stuff on personal development and relationship building and mindset and communication skills." So they brought me in to work on a lot of that stuff. The main thing was like relationship building with teammates and communication skills and creating culture, which they do a great job of. Gabe Kapler was running that. So I just got to be there for a week and work on that, which is really cool. And then I did the strength and conditioning as well, but that was kind of a secondary focus.
Right. Well, it's interesting you bring up the personal evolution and growth, and I've been teaching these trainer development workshops for several decades now, and everyone comes in and their singular focus is trying to learn the SPEAR system and learn our version of self-defense or our approach to self-defense. And a lot of them fail miserably and then get angry at me because they're not successful. They de-affiliate and blame me because they're not making any money, even though my singular objective and actionable item was teaching them my methodology. I wasn't there to babysit them or teach them how to, plan their day or grow or run their business, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is you figure out, sometimes because of the pain of failure, sometimes serendipitously, you figure out that there's a whole other part of life other than a skill set. And you see that even in professional sports, musicians, or people, kill themselves, kill their career because they can't handle life. They're still the best guitarists in the world, but now they're dead because they OD'd on drugs, or they were a great player, but they're, violent at home and gambling and so this is, and reading between the lines, this has been my personal evolution, although not as extreme, is my exploration over decades was realizing that understanding how I looked at fear with regard to self-defense had transcendent, we talked about this in detail on the show where you interviewed me, that understanding fear and being able to look at fear was transformative, that it helped you self-actualize as a person, that gave you the best shot at living the best life you could.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm hearing with you, is that like, hey, yeah, $100,000 a year at 19, and then when you're 20, you're 30, you're in your 30s, you were able to somehow see some of these voids in your life and explore them. Were there certain books or mentors along the way, or was a lot of this just your trial and error?
It was a lot of things. So I ran a 6-figure business from 19 to 31. And at 31, I had to call my mom and ask if I could move in her spare bedroom because I'd blown it all. So I had a lot of bad habits. We have a lot of addiction in our family. We have, we grew up, the glass is always half empty, like just negative. And so I had all that. And I always looked at, I didn't know I had this self-limiting belief of that people with money were bad people. Because when I grew up, everybody that had money was the biggest douchebag you could imagine, just treated people like shit. Obviously, I know that's not the case now, but that was what I grew up with.
Sure.
And my dad, I have a lot of memories of my childhood of being super scared. You want to talk about fear? Like, I lived my entire childhood in fear because most of my most vivid memories are my dad coming home late at night after having cheated on my mom for the 100th time and them having a blowout fight, screaming, glasses breaking. My dad leaves. My mom drinks herself into oblivion, and I got to go pick her up and carry her up to bed when I'm like 12, 13 years old. Even younger than that, it was going on. And as a little kid, I just remember hiding behind my bedroom door and kind of peeking out. And then the next day after those things would happen, my mom would be hungover and have just a crazy temper. So if anything went on, if I dropped something in the kitchen, someone was going to blow a gasket. And so I would just creep around. To this day, my wife will tell you, I've just gotten over it in the last few years, but I'll still catch myself. Like, I won't close doors without turning the knob so it's silent.
Right.
I do all that stuff. Like I close everything very silently because that still goes back to childhood where I don't want to draw any attention to myself and for people to know I'm around, which is weird because now I can get on stage in front of 1,000 people or 10,000 people and do whatever and sing Taylor Swift. But some of those old habits, from those things, your transformative years, some of that sticks.
Yeah. That's insane. So first off, like, thank you for being so honest and vulnerable. I think it's going to blow away because we all have these the little skeletons in the closet, that hidden shit that we don't want people to know. And I think that it's not a pity party. It's being able to just be transparent about your life and those changes. So we all have, whether it's a spiritual guide, something happens, someone has a car accident and almost dies. You read a good book. Someone puts their arm around you and says, like, you're going to continue to, you're going to be in jail or dead by this time if you don't do this. And you happen to take that at face value. You go, like, that was that turning point. What happened, between that, or was it like this slow, intuitive evolution? Because right now, like you said, and the thing that caught my attention is, how the personal development leadership aspect of your you being the business of Jay, and how that is almost more important than the fitness.
Yeah. So it was more like the latter, like you said, the kind of this slow evolution where one particular case was Alan Cosgrove, who I mentioned earlier. He had stage 4 cancer for the second time, and he's always been a really close friend and mentor to me, and just kind of a bigger brother that I would always go to for advice and for feedback. So when I first had, I was having some serious issues. My first iteration of the gym, the building got sold, and I had some real issues, and I was going to have to shut down for a while. And I was like, man, this is all I've ever known. What am I going to do? He was super helpful through that. He was super helpful through other stuff. Then when he goes in stage 4 twice, the odds of him beating that a second time are pretty slim, So myself and Dave Tate and a few other people who were really close to them would talk a lot during those days. And he never, talked about himself or anything. He was always there from his hospital bed, checking in on me and reaching out to me and just making sure that I knew, how fleeting life was, and it's not promised, and, don't waste any time. So I think that was definitely one transformative moment, and happy to say he's great now. He's healthy as could be. He's running Spartan races and whatnot.
Amazing.
10 years ago, at least, probably more than that. And then it just was all these little things where, I blew all this money, and I moved back into my mom's house. Then I rebuild the business, make more money than I ever have. And again, a couple years later, I'm like, holy shit, I'm having these bad habits again. I'm out 7 nights a week, doing stuff. But one of my worst fears was becoming my dad. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm almost becoming my dad in certain ways. Not in the way I treat people, but in some of my habits and addictions and things like that. So I said, this is not good. And I recognize, maybe through books I read and people I talked to, that environment definitely triggers behaviors. And the only way I was going to totally change myself and reinvent myself was getting out of Jersey. So I've been in Southern Cali for 7 years now, and that old person is unrecognizable to me and to a lot of people now. When I left, I was in a better place. Like, I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I just knew that I had to get away from the town where everybody knew me a certain way, and family members and friends and whatnot. I could read all the books I wanted and do the mindset shifts I wanted, but until I relocated, I thought that was going to be the game changer. And there's a guy who, John C. Maxwell, who writes a lot of personal development books. If you're ever in the airports, you'll see a ton of his books in the personal development section. He always talked about that, where to really reinvent yourself, you have to relocate. Your growth will be exponentially better if you do. And I found that
interesting that you bring up Maxwell and writers. You're familiar, of course, Dwyer. So one of the most potent things I ever read that he wrote was he wrote, if you didn't know where you lived, where would you want to live, and why aren't you living there? If you didn't know what you do, what would you want to do, and why aren't you doing that?
Yeah.
If you didn't know how old you were and you looked in the mirror, how old would you think you were? It was just like, I got goosebumps.
Wow.
Just like, holy shit, right? Because like that shit weighs on you. You look up and you go, like I'll bump into people that are, that I went to school with, or I'll see them online and they look like 20 years older than me. Right. I mean, and the same for you, because you're, incredibly fit and I hate the term active lifestyle, but you're like, but you're not just active, like doing like, workouts on the beach cause you live 3 feet from the beach.
Yeah.
I mean, you do crazy shit too. Like you're part of an improv group, right? You guys get together. Like, so you're continually like stretching your soul and your mind, which I think, which I know like keeps you young, right?
Mm-hmm.
You talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. And that was the thing for so many years too. I kind of just led that singular focused life of growing the business, and it was all just fitness. But once I started doing all those things, it does really expand your horizons and just give you different viewpoints of the world and help you be more creative and relate to people more. So yeah, I try to do things that I fear for so many years, I feared public speaking. So I started practicing it more and joined Toastmasters. And then I thought, what's the next level? Well, improv, certainly. When you get up there and you don't know what you're going to say, and there's also the expectation of being funny. But what I learned was that I firmly believe now that improv should be a requirement in high school and college, because it teaches you essential life skills. It teaches you listening skills. Because, Tony, if you and I got up on stage and the audience suggests that we're at Baskin-Robbins, so we can't have anything pre-planned. We have to listen to the audience, and then I have to listen to what you say. So if you say, oh, this chocolate ice cream is great, I can't say, no, it's not chocolate ice cream, we're at the beach. Like, I have to just listen and respond to you. And the first rule of improv is yes and, which is amazing for business meetings and negotiations and just relationships. Because the second you say no to someone, whether it's an argument, you could be talking about business, you could be talking about politics, the second you say no, a wall goes up, and then they're not going to hear what you say. So if you say yes and, even if it could be something really controversial, like gun control or something, someone says something you disagree with and you say no, you're never going to get anywhere. So you say, yes, that's a good point, and what do you think about this? So you can apply these things. So it teaches you to listen, to yes and, to think on your feet, to react, and of course, just to get out of your comfort zone. So I love it, and doing things like that has been hugely transformative.
I dig that, and I hate to hijack this because it's fascinating, but I hate to hijack this back to you made me flash back to the 80s when I developed my panic attack force on force scenario system, and a lot of people don't realize. And I'll send you some old footage of this and let you see this crazy. We were putting together some video stuff, and my guy Adrian, who's doing all our media stuff, was showing me some like videos from the 80s where I got like long hair and a little ponytail, and where I'm like, holy shit, look at, oh my god, and ridiculous looking, and so but what we did, this is like back like almost 40 years ago. Is we would set up a fight, but imagine doing improv, but you're in protective gear, and you're agreeing to a confrontation, but you don't know where you are or what your attacker's motives are yet. And you just made me flash back to this. It's so fascinating when you said, hey, it's the yes and hey, we're a so the audience has Baskin-Robbins and go. Or you're two gay guys, or you're out on a date waiting for, or one guy's, whatever it is. So we would do these fights, and I just flash back to this where it would be like, we would have certain characters we'd pull out of a hat. So it'd be a loan shark, a drunk on the street, jealous boyfriend, and then we would pick what we call a PIA, primary initiation attack. So it would be some sort of street attack that was congruent with being in the street. So you could be in our self-defense seminar, be a high-skilled jiu-jitsu or taekwondo guy where you want to maybe do a spinning hook kick, but you're basically like a loan shark collecting money.
Okay.
And now you can headbutt the guy, you can hit him with a gut shot, you can bitch slap him.
Yeah. Right.
And then you had to start, and you couldn't start. Now, what do most people and I told you I apologize for hijacking this, but it's a fun visual.
No, I love it.
Is like most of the time when we practice self-defense, we practice the physical. Nobody ever practiced the improv of dialogue while you were threat discriminating, while you were figuring out what the fuck's going on here. Am I really in danger? And so well,
that's what I love when you and I spoke, and I love about all your stuff is, because remember I said to you, I was like, man, did you study psychology and all? Like, it's crazy the stuff that you know and talk about that other people don't.
It's I don't know. It's a blend of instincts and intuition, man. And I was on another podcast yesterday or this morning, and we were talking about how, like 20, 30 years ago, I was doing what is now called interleaving effect in brain-based learning on how to hack learning systems retention and for math, for piano, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is what I was doing with our ballistic microfights. But so we would go into these scenarios, Jay, and someone would walk up and go, hey, the boss wants his money. Right. And we're like, or like we're inside in the bottom of my school, basement, concrete ceilings, and someone would walk up and go, man, I can't believe it's raining. And you couldn't go, What are you talking about? We're inside, man. Like suddenly you had to go, we're outside walking. Or like, it was literally, you made me flash back 30 years to that. And we would have the craziest fights because everyone who practiced self-defense kind of bowed first, metaphorically, and said, okay, let's practice getting out of a headlock. Let's practice two-hand grab. Let's practice hold a gun to my face. What I did is I worked on the 3 seconds before contact or the 10 seconds or the 15 seconds.
Right.
And it was fascinating watching people screw up there because when you had this dialogue in an uncomfortable situation, it changed your physiological state. It changed how you breathed. It changed how you spoke. And suddenly you would see somebody go, "Hey man, I don't want any trouble," and their voice was like that. But what this was organic fear of public speaking. Of screwing up, and because we can get really good at the physical because we can say, "Hold on a second, let me get ready," and then we execute.
Yeah.
So really
fascinating.
Really interesting tie-in there. Where and we used to call those ironically, before we developed the high gear suit and the ballistic microfight, we called that stuff panic attack seminars.
Okay. Because
what I would do is I would have all these different martial artists from all over Montreal coming to these things when they caught wind of it, and people would come in. It was almost like the original UFC. Remember the first couple in 1993 were, and this is 1980. We were doing this. The first UFCs were style versus style.
Yep.
So people heard we were doing these like street self-defense scenarios, and they would come in. And one of the things we did early on is I would just kind of do Socratically. I go, "Oh, Jay, tell us about yourself." You go, "Hey, I'm Jay. I'm from Jersey. I'm a boxer." And I go, "Okay, Jay, if like somebody came at you in the street and tried to hit you in the head with a haymaker, what would you do?" And you go, "Well, man, I would, I'd slip it and hit him with a body shot." And everyone would talk about the idea of what they would do. And then when we would do the scenarios, nobody could do it.
Wow. Because
it was the Jack in the Box. It wasn't. Yeah. And this is the interesting thing is it wasn't that they couldn't do it because we were contriving a demo that negated a skill set.
Yeah.
It was that regardless of whether you're jiu-jitsu, taekwondo, boxing, wrestling, if I said to you, okay, scenarios at a bar, go at the bar there, and a guy bumps into you and goes, "Watch it, asshole," and you're like 12 inches away, and now you've got to morally and ethically try to diffuse it. That was the other condition. The only condition we had there, almost like in improv, is like if you're up on stage and I say Baskin Robbins, you can't be a mute, right? You agree to be part of the show.
Yeah.
Right. And so we would tell people, if somebody came into you and started something, you couldn't just hit them and run. You had to morally, ethically, legally try to de-escalate and diffuse, because that was our expectation of a good citizen.
Wow.
And this is the 80s we were doing that.
Yeah.
And it's evolved into all this. But anyways,
you know what's funny, what I thought when you were talking about the UFC and the example you gave of the boxer and how it all just goes out the window when the shit hits the fan is Ken Shamrock told me about being backstage at the first UFC, and everybody, even though they had more than just a few seconds, you were giving these guys to prepare, because they didn't have that. Like, so the boxer and the wrestler backstage, when they saw when shit was going down, what shit was going down in the ring as they were watching on the monitors backstage,
right?
Ken Shamrock said 85 to 90% of the guys back there all of a sudden were like, "Oh, fuck, what have I gotten into?"
Right.
And they even had 15, 20 minutes to prepare.
Yeah. Well, consent and preparation changes everything. And listen, to step into even like an amateur smoker, in a bingo parlor with a fake ring takes a tremendous amount of courage, as does stepping on, the number one fear in the world, as from research, is public speaking, right? Yeah. Like if you ask somebody like over and over again, like list, it's public speaking, afraid of sharks, afraid of like a loss of a loved one or loss of security, like getting thrown into the trunk and dragged to a secondary crime scene isn't in anyone's fear loop. Like nobody thinks about that.
Right.
And it's because, if I was in front of you and you had a buddy on each side of you, and I said, one of you is going to get attacked this weekend, each one of you would look to the side thinking it's the other guy.
Yeah.
Most of us don't ever think it's going to happen to us,
Right.
So, yeah, that doesn't surprise me backstage. Like that takes to box, to even to enter like a non-contact tournament. It could be a gymnastics tournament. It could be the performance anxiety because you want to do well.
Totally.
It's unconsciously, intrinsically connected to your self-esteem and your dignity and your pride. And this ties us into, and this is a great time for you to share some insights. Self-awareness is everything. I tell people, if you don't have self-awareness, like if you didn't have intuitive self-awareness, you'd be a dick right now, right? You'd be the rich guy with a drinking problem on his third wife. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Because you'd have become your dad.
Yeah.
But you had self-awareness, and that's serendipity, that you were able to extract yourself from this other devolving path. Talk to me a little bit about self-awareness and how that plays in when you're mentoring and coaching people.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's super important. And I don't think I had it, throughout my 20s and maybe even my early 30s. I just kind of existed and went through life and did what I did. And when I became self-aware, that's when everything changed for me. So I'm aware all the time of, how I'm showing up, how I'm presenting myself, how I'm treating people, how I'm listening, how I'm making them feel. If I say something, and look, I'll still catch myself. I'm just on my journey like everybody else. I haven't reached self-actualization and mastery yet. I'll still catch myself to this day. If I'm in a room, with a bunch of guys, maybe pro athletes or guys that I look up to, I'll catch myself saying something just to impress them. But at least now I have the awareness that I could fix it.
Right.
And fix it 2 minutes later and not do that again, or review it afterwards and say, oh, fuck, why did I do that?
Right.
So yeah, it's just, being aware of everything at all times. People, and I did it forever, just kind of exist and go through your day. But, how are people responding to you? How are you showing up in every interaction, every conversation with your business? And then review it. So what I would do is when I first started on this journey, I would be hyper aware of things the same way I would track PRs in the gym or, look at business stats. Like, okay, now I had that kind of stuff locked in. I don't need to worry about that. Now I'm going to start tracking all this stuff and be aware of how am I in conversation? How am I treating people? All that kind of stuff. And I would measure that each day and I would write it down in a journal. What did I do well today? What do I need to fix tomorrow? And at the end of the night, do a little review. And now for me, again, being really quiet and socially awkward and growing up without having a lot of friends, I would go to any kind of social situation. Like if you invite me over for a party, I go, okay, there's going to be 10 really cool people at Tony's. I'm going to visualize on the way over there how I want to act, conversations I want to have with you, your wife, with the 5 other guys that are going to be here, whatever, how I want to make people feel. And then what's my weakness? Okay, I know I'm going to do this. Let's not do that. Now I don't have to do that as much because I feel like it's become natural and I'm good at it and I'm always surrounded by people. But I did that for years. And then I would review it on the way home. Like, okay, I had a really great conversation with Tony, but then with Tony's wife or with Billy or whoever, I had lower energy or I was this or I was that. I need to work on that. Or I went back into my shell. They said something that made me uncomfortable. So I went back to the old version of myself and then was shut down for the rest of the night.
This is a lot of work, and people don't realize self-actualization self-actualization is a lot of work. And it's a continuing thing. Like I'm 57 now, and some of the awareness shifts that I've had in the last year are mind-boggling. This morning I looked at something I wrote a year. How Facebook pops up your memories. And there's something I wrote last year about our scenario system and ballistic microfights, and I read it, and then I spent an hour completely rewriting it, realizing I don't like the tone of that. The tone of that is off-putting. The tone of that is a little bit too arrogant. It's not sharing the value. Right. It's not Socratic. It's not, and like that's just in a year. And I've been in business for 40 years. So when I wrote that last year, that was 39 years of experience writing it last year. And it wasn't that it was bad.
Wow. It
wasn't right anymore. It wasn't, and so I just want to share to our listeners here, because you said something and I thought it was humble and true, is that it's just the journey. And you don't ever get to a point, you know, I mean, I look at it as always just reinventing yourself. You know, how could I, and I did a talk last year where I said, hey, life is a school and you're both the student and your teacher. The teacher metaphorically being, how do you grade yourself today? Did you give yourself an F on energy and an A on eating shit food, right? Like for each subject that could make up the quality of your day, you know, pass, fail, like you know, are you going to rewrite that test? So when you're, cause you do, workshops, and I'm sure you do one-on-ones and stuff like that. When you explain this process, because I can imagine some of the people, because I've got a lot of first responders and, you know, martial artists and cops and military and all guys who listen to our stuff. I could hear them because that type A personality, of which we are, but we're also different because of the self-awareness. I could hear some of them thinking, and I might be putting words in people's mouth and maybe I'm completely wrong, going, that's a lot of work and that sounds very contrived, and I'm going to just be my fucking self, and I'm not going to, you know, visualize how I'm going to behave at the party. People can, you know, fuck them if they don't like me for who I am. Yeah. And do you get anyone who's that honest to say that? And then how would you answer that? If you were my coach and you had just said, hey man, here's what you got to do. You've got to visualize your performance. You got to visualize success, and then you got to evaluate how you did. Otherwise, it's like writing a workout, right? Yeah. You do it, and then you record your numbers, and then you go, wow, okay, my diet sucks. I had no energy, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so once I came to the realization that life is all relationships. It's all relationship building. You know, your technical skills, whether it's your fighting skills or your writing skills or your ability to make a dish or write a book, that your marketing skills and business acumen, it all pales in comparison to your people like you. You're not going to get that far in life. If you can't build rapport, if you can't build relationships, you're going to die lonely and you're going to be unhappy. You'll never reach your full potential. So when I realized that, I just placed all my focus and energy on building relationships and on putting other people first. And it does change everything. Whereas most people, well, I don't want to say most people, but I was always internally focused on, okay, here's what I'm insecure about. How can I fix that? How can I make more money? How could I do this? How can I do that? And then when I shifted to, hey, Tony, what's going on with you? What are you struggling with? Is there someone I can introduce you to? Can I help you in some way? What can I do for you? And now I do that with everyone I meet and everyone I know constantly. Everything changed for me. So, you know, and I've honestly, like you said in that hypothetical, I've never had that. I've never had that resistance. Once I get to sit down with people and explain the difference that it's made in my life and that it will make in their life, there's really not that much resistance. So, and I'll ask questions, you know, like, what do you really want out of your life? What's important? What are you most passionate about? If you could only do one thing, what would it be? You know, and then some deep dive questions on relationships. You know, how are you showing up? Are you a plus or minus in those relationships? Do people know you love them? How are you expressing that? How are they receiving that? And then we might even go deeper on, I mean, I'm kind of going off on tangent here, but on the 5 love languages. So that's really important for a relationship you're in, not just with your significant other, your wife, husband, whatever it might be, but with your friends, your business partners. So
what are the 5 love languages? Can we talk about them?
So yeah, it's words of affirmation, physical touch, quality time, gifts, and what's the 4th one?
I think that was 4.
I'm drawing a blank on the quality time, words of affirmation, physical touch, gifts, and acts of service. Right. So for example, if you're in a relationship with somebody, your wife, and they're a physical touch and quality time person, that's how they receive love. But for you, what makes you feel good and love?
You're just buying them shit.
Well, no, okay. Might, yeah. So okay. You might think buying them shit makes them feel loved when they're like, no, it's physical touch.
Got it.
Time. Like, and everybody's different. And that even goes with your friends, right? So you might have your best friend. Or, you know, if you and I want to express, you know, like to Bedros or to you, like I'm physical touch. Like I like hugging my friends and I like spending quality time with them. But if you send me a book, like that's nice. I appreciate it, but it's not as much as you driving up or me driving down and you and I having coffee together. So which you've been kind enough for, like we've done that in the past. But see what I'm saying? Like, people need to know these things. So, I mean, I could go on.
It's huge, and it's funny. Like my brain right now, I'm going like, I just asked Jay, like, so what do people, when people like balk at this process, and you answer, well, nobody ever does. And I'm like going, fuck, is it just me? I'm the only one and it's funny because I'm incredibly introspective to the point of like, I would consider it a fatal flaw. I overthink stuff, because part of my thing, you talk about like, you still turn your doorknobs super, super slow just to be the ninja in and out. Yeah. is my whole thing growing up was like, I needed everybody to like me. So I still get, like, I spend a ridiculous amount of time online trying to convince people that they're looking at this wrong, and that I'll get private messages going, hey, that guy's a troll, that guy's a keyboard warrior, why do you answer these guys, and no matter what it is, like, and I'm getting better at it, but I mean, it would just like consume me, because there was something in the way I was raised of, I needed everybody to like me, or I didn't know where I stood. Yeah. So kind of,
yeah, I mean, I was that way too. I needed everyone to like me, but I feel like I've gotten way better at that, and almost gotten over it to an extent, because I realized that I've created this circle, like you said at the beginning. Oh, Jay knows everybody, and that's how people know me now, which is nuts, because I could tell you that all throughout my teens and my 20s, I sat alone on most weekends waiting for someone to call me and hang out. Right. And now when I have a Super Bowl party and there's 25 celebrities and multimillionaires and all that, it blows me away. But I created that through a lot of disciplined action and hard work. But I don't go out of my way to worry about what people care about, what people think about me anymore, because, we have a limited amount of time. How could I waste my energy trying to convince that guy online to like me when I know the way you feel about me, and Luca feels about me, and Bedros feels about me? That's enough. And then I can't show up and be my best self for you. Like when we're going to meet at Scopa and hang out, I'm fucking exhausted because I'm dealing with this other guy online. I'm going out of my way for people that I love and that I know love me, and I'll just move on. And if it rubs someone the wrong way and they don't like me, there's nothing I can do about it. That's reading Stoicism helped me a lot on my journey. So there's only two things you can control: is your actions and your thoughts. And whatever anyone else does, however else they react, whatever else they think, it has no impact on me. That's them. They got to deal with it. That might be something from their childhood, their insecurity. It has nothing to do with me.
I dig it, and it's a lesson that I've got to relearn every week. And I tell you what, you remind me of that, and I'm going to teach you to slam doors. Let that close. And and it's interesting, because of everything in the world, there's only like one thing literally that we can't regenerate or get back, and that's time. And so I would, and it's funny how it's so easy to give wonderful advice to other people and then not live it. But I'm always telling people, hey man, you just mugged yourself. They're like, what? Yeah, you just like mugged yourself of like 3 hours. What are you doing there? Like you can't get that. Like you can't get that time back. So that's a huge, great reminder for me. How do people learn? I try to keep these things like inside an hour for people, so they jump on there. So, and we can go as long as we want. But I want to try and like you shared like a bunch of really good things. I love the takeaways for me, and what I'm hoping that the listeners, and it's so weird how I'm trying to anticipate how a type A, first responder, like listening to this is going, I don't know. And the bottom line is at the end of the day, guys, regardless of whether, what your uniform isn't, it reminds me of Emerson's quote of what goes on around you compares little with what goes on inside you. Mm-hmm. And everybody I meet is like that meme that goes around, everyone you meet's fighting a battle. Right. Yeah. And it's deep and it's important stuff. If people want to learn more about your process? You write a ton. You got blogs coming out. You got the podcast coming out. Let's talk a little bit about more of how you share your insights and your experiences with the world.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can go to renegaderadiopodcast.com. We're going to be ramping up. I'm going to start doing a bunch of short, like 2 to 10 minute episodes that are just me, just ranting on some of these topics. Just do a deep dive on one of these topics.
Nice.
But we have a ton of great guests lined up. You've been on the show. So usually we do 2 episodes a week, but now it'll be ramped up because of the short ones I do. And then if you just go to jay.fit, that will redirect you to my main site. I'm most active on Instagram, but yeah, and then we're usually pumping out content all the time, and then I do events.
You got a big one coming up.
I think we're up to like 8 or 9 of my own events a year now. We just had one recently, which was great, and then every probably month and a half or so we have them here in Santa Monica, and then I do a few elsewhere.
What is that? About 10, 12 people get together, and it's just like.
It's about 12 to 15 people, and it's kind of just like a mind, body, spirit thing where we push people out of their comfort zone. So there's physical training, there's some kind of like I might have I'd like to talk to you about it actually, but the previous one, Tony Jeffries, our mutual friend who's a nice. Olympic medal winning boxer, he took him to a boxing workout. We'll do some breath work, and then we just do the bonding. So most of the guys that I speak to that come to me, one of the things they're missing more than anything in their lives, and they could be really high-level successful guys, they're missing connection. Most people are missing connection. We're more connected but less connected than ever now.
Right.
And that changes your life. Everybody wants connection. We evolved in tribes where we spent a lot of time. It would be really almost unheard of for you to spend any time alone. You would hunt and gather with the tribe. You would eat with the tribe. You would sleep close to the ground with small numbers of people. So you were never alone. Nowadays, people are alone all the time, and they want connection. And that's one of the things I'm most passionate about. So you get 12 to 15 guys, they bond, and you know how when you bleed, sweat, and cry together, which they do over the course of the weekend, you bond. You go through these intense experiences, and by the end of the weekend, every guy breaks down about something. They're crying. Maybe it's, I had a 19-year coke habit, or I'm cheating on my wife all the time, or my business is falling apart, whatever it might be. And so I have guest speakers come in. I speak a lot, and we just do roundtable conversations about what are you lying to yourself about? What lies are you telling other people? What don't you want people to find out? And we get really intense and deep on, what's most important in life, and we push them out of their comfort zone. So they'll do improv. So that's public speaking. Again, the physical stuff. It's all encompassing. It's awesome stuff. It's my favorite thing I've ever done in all the years I've been in business.
Nice. Yeah. I've done a couple of those. So I went to one 8-day intensive, the Hoffman Institute, a few years ago, and it's just if you had told me, I've always been open to that stuff since the 80s, like a reading thing. I've always been trying to understand myself, understand anger and fear and all of that. So but it's it's scary for people, and if it's scary, you should probably do it, right? That's the whole no fear thing.
I was actually, back to Maxwell for a second. I was on a call this morning, and I figured I'd share this with you because we were talking about this morning. It was why do people not do things? Obviously, because of fear. And there's 4 fears that John talks about: is the fear of failure, the fear of trading security for the unknown, the fear of what others will think or say, which is a huge one for most people, and the fear that success will alienate your peers or your family members or your colleagues or whatever it may be. And that's a huge one too, that people don't realize. Like, if the fear of what other people will say or think is holding you back, and that's why you don't publish your video or put out content on Instagram or whatever. But the fear that success will alienate your peers, that's deep-seated psychologically. Sometimes you don't even know that. And there's a lot of people that they can't be more successful or make more money than their dad did. And they don't even really know it, but that's what's holding them back. And so when you can dig deep and address those things, you can really open up a whole new realm of possibility and achievement.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Listen, like all of this stuff, if you meditate and ruminate on any of it, you'll find some sort of homeostasis, some sort of balance with it. If you need to, research a little bit more or talk, and all of it is worthwhile discussion. It's there's an expression, a martial art expression, like people boast that they've got 20 years of training, but what they really have is 1 year of experience repeated 20 times. Right. And if we apply that metaphorically to what you're talking about, is have you evolved? Are you growing? And what are the areas, use it, if we use that grading metaphor, is wow, I really fucked that up. What do I need to learn about that? And everything can be a lesson. That's the most exciting thing for me. I was just, my son just moved back. He's 26, and I have these deep talks with him because they're talks my dad never had with me. And I'm not going to make that mistake. And I look at him sometimes and I go, and he's like listening to me, and I go, if somebody was telling me and I was you at 26, I might be thinking, what's this fucking old guy talking about? Right? I go, listen, I'm just going to plant the seeds, and some will stick and some will won't, and maybe you'll get it. But I wish, and it's a cliche, Jay, right? I go, I'll have this epiphany, and I'll go, why didn't somebody tell me this when I was 20? Right? And probably 5 people tried to. Right. You're just going yeah, it's okay. I got this. I know exactly what I'm doing here. And this is like I see so many of these people online, I'll get an email going, life management coach. And look down and the guy's like 17. And I'm like, dude, how could you, right? And this isn't, I'm not judging. There are some geniuses out there, right?
Sure.
If some music teacher said to Mozart, look, you're only 7, shut up, right? So I'm not talking about the anomaly and the outlier, but you got to live a little bit to learn a lot, right?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine not too long ago, and it was only until I think he just turned 40, and he said, I feel like I'm just starting to figure life out a little bit now. It's like you just have to go through it. You need that experience. Right. What you were saying a second ago about constantly evolving, I feel like that's probably my biggest fear, is to be the same person I am today a year from now, or even 3 months from now. I need to be better in some way. And because I've cultivated that around me with my circle, I see that all the time. So now next weekend, let's say I'm going to go to our friend Bedros is running his annual event, and I'm going to see guys there like B, like Craig, like whoever else, that every time I see them, they're better in some way, whether it's the way they treat the waitress or their energy or the way they're in conversation with other people that I just notice. And you can't help but get better when you proactively surround yourself. Yeah. Holy shit, he's that much better at talking to strangers than he was 6 weeks ago. I got to step up my game.
Yeah. No, I dig that. And then there's a few communities that I will try to manipulate my schedule so I can go hang out and be there, because it's like I'm East Coast too, right? So I grew up in Montreal, East Coast, but there's a couple times a year I like to go to New York for a few days. I just it lights me up, right? I need to, even though I live kind of in a cozy country, part, a few miles off the beach, up in the hills. I can't see my neighbors, but I need to get up to LA, every 6 weeks just for a hit of the energy, and to see certain people, and to see, I'll walk in streets. And I'll look at signage and the setup of the store, and my takeaway, I was just up for some meetings with my son, Nick, and we're just walking and I go, look at that store. Look at the entrepreneurship that set that up. That is so I feed off of everything, and it's fascinating. It's out there. If you want to be inspired, there's a lot out there for everybody. So message there is seek to reinvent yourself.
Definitely.
Because what's that?
Sorry, Ken.
No. I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, back to your point before a little bit about if a type A guy was like, I don't know. The reality is that you're always going to have to deal with tough people in any situation, in any line of work. We all have to deal with tough people. They might be your family members, and if you can improve that, everything around you, everything in your life is going to be easier and is going to improve. And waiting for people to change is never going to happen. You have to change how you approach them. So if your boss is an asshole, he's not going to change. If you have struggles getting along with your dad who's 75, that generation is not as into change and personal development as we are. You have to change. So now, I told you about the beginnings with my mom, and that lasted 30 plus years. Now my mom and I have an amazing relationship, and I actually want her to move here from Jersey, which if you would have told me that 5 years ago, I would have moved to Hawaii.
Right.
And it's not because she changed at all. It's because I changed, and I'm able to better control situations and conversations and steer them in the direction that I want them to go and steer them away from the direction I don't want them to go. So if you can do that, that's an invaluable skill as a cop, as a first responder, and anything. If you can control, and you talk about this a lot constantly, obviously, but it applies to every aspect of your life. If you have that psychological kind of, I don't want to say, dominance or control, but you can really, maybe manipulate's not the best word, but the conversation and the relationship in any way you want it to go. Whereas now I had to get away from, I mentioned people in Jersey that I thought were holding me back. Now, for the first 3 years I lived here, I couldn't go back and be around them. Now I can go back and control them and turn them into completely different people when they're around me.
Right. No, I get that. And it's the word selfish can have a very pejorative, negative connotation, but it can also be the most amazing thing. Like if you selfishly go, how can I change my behavior, my presentation, or my body, my physique, my diet? And that's what it is. It's like doing the right shit for yourself. And that's what I hear in that is like, my boss is if you got an antagonistic relationship with your boss or your dad or it could be your wife or your kid, it's what are the things that you can change that are going to mitigate and change it? Because at the end of the day, it's all about outcome, right? Yep. So you got to be super clear with the goal. And if the goal, like in my case, the goal is to get to safety, then your behavior needs to support. It's got to be congruent with that. So it's a whole different way to look at it. And there's a lot of people out there that, especially in this day and age, you mentioned earlier about, everyone's a lone operator. So it's very easy to your answer is like, hey, fuck everybody and fuck this. And then, what you see is what you get. But at the end of the day, if that's propagating a more volatile relationship with yourself and view of the world, like that's not really serving you, is it?
No, not at all.
So anyways, fascinating stuff. Dude, I am going to see you at Pedro's event.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So I'm not going to come up on stage and sing with you, but I will.
All right. A little disappointing, but all right.
But it may be security for you because like you'll have like people like trying to tear your clothes off and everything, performance and everything. I know we let's wrap this up. I'm sure I will have you on the show again. It was fascinating and it was great to have you on the other side of the mic and sharing some of your insights. But
thank you so much.
Tell everyone again how they can reach you and find you.
Yeah, j.fit, J Ferruggia on Instagram, and Renegade Radio podcast.
Brother, it was great catching up.
My pleasure.
Hey, listen, I the last 3 times I was in LA, you were busy Spartan racing and doing your workshop. So I went to Scopa by myself, and I've been eating the cheese blintzes each time.
They're so good.
Dude, they're the best in the world, but it looks like I'm doing an experiment on how far your skin can stretch.
Oh, dude, we got to turn that around.
I need to get back in shape. And then today I just posted this stuff on Instagram. Adrian's putting together this like little video clip. And so he pulled up videos of me from 1986 when I was 176 pounds.
Oh, wow.
freaking, and I'm doing this stuff for Panther Video, and it's, hey, have you seen this? And it was like, you know what I felt like? I felt like at the end of Dodgeball.
Yeah.
You know, with like, just like, what was the character's name in Dodgeball?
I'm drawing a blank. I can't think.
Right, but just that's just me, just big and fat, chewing on a big drumstick. And I told him, I said, hey, put a little chronological thing together there of me ripped and just me getting overweight. I got to start training.
All right,
let's
make
do
it happen, man.
Okay, man. I'll come visit you soon, and I'll see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Be safe. Speak to you soon.